Hey everyone, it's Josh here with the Place for Gamers, the Game Father. I'm here with Jacob and Chris, and we're here to talk about an extremely rare item that Jacob found in a local garage sale. Check this out. Let's see which one is it. Here we go. What we have here is a prototype for the game Earthbound on the NES. So, Jacob, tell us how you found it.
Man, I was filling up, gas station on 82nd in Portland, if you don't know what that is, and I saw a little neon yard sale sign a block away, so I just decided, what the hell. I went over there, I didn't even drive, I just walked over there, and they had a stack of Nintendo games, and this was just sitting among them. And, I was like, oh, that looks like an interesting, I immediately said, that looks like a prototype, because, I know what they look like. And then when I actually loaded it up, Earthbound came up, and I immediately thought, well, this isn't real. Earth, out of all the games, that's like, no, it's probably some ROM hack or just homemade thing. But now after a couple of, experts have really chimed in and dumped it and really looked at a magnifying glass, it seems like it's a legit copy of Earthbound, like a real prototype.
So what this is they made Mother on the Famicom, and they were going to bring it over here as Earthbound, obviously before the Super Nintendo Earthbound that we all know and some of us love. Nintendo had fully translated it. They even had boxes and manuals. They had all their marketing material made up, and then they never released it. But this is actually that code, that completed code that they were going to release. And after asking some experts, it turns out that what most likely this is a game that they showed for a weekend to customers to kind of gauge interest. Down in Beaverton, HAL Laboratories had basically like a customer day where you could come in, see what they were working on, and they had a few of these cut out of the Zelda case, or whatever case they could find, and there it is. I mean, there's one other one known from that day, and this is not that one, this is an all-new one.
Right. I think there's a total of 5 or 6.
This makes 5.
This makes the 5th one.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll show some close-up pictures here in a minute, but the chips actually stick out slightly from the case. That's why it is cut out. And we opened it up, and what'd you find, Chris?
Well, there were a couple things that threw up red flags, which we've already discussed. First, we thought, okay, it's cut out of the Zelda case, and it's made to look exactly like known Prototype 4, which is really weird. But, when I asked the expert and he said this is what happened on that day, it's like, oh, actually that lends a little bit of credence to it. But what looks weird is you look at the actual PCB, and there's no white markings. There's no ink or silkscreen, which every production game that you've ever seen has, and every prototype, even the ones that we could find pictures of on Google, every single one had all this text and ink markings, and this doesn't have any of that. So it's really interesting, like, why didn't they do that for this one? And that's why when you first posted it, I was kind of like, I'm not so sure about this. But we've opened it up and we had a look at the back of it, which had something really interesting.
So anyway, after I posted this on the Retro Gamers board, I got a lot of people hitting me up. One of them was a man working on a documentary for Earthbound. They're apparently making a documentary for the game Earthbound, and he lives out in Beaverton, one of the people working on it, and he came out to my house in Portland and checked it out, and he thought it looked legit. He had seen like 4 of the prototypes. He's been all over the world filming them.
Yeah.
And then I told him where I got it. He went back to the yard sale, left the people his number. They called back, then he went there and had an interview, and apparently this came from a woman who worked as a senior buyer for Nintendo as part of some team called GC6, which I know nothing about. But so apparently,
sounds legit.
I mean, all right, I could have just made that up. I don't know, but you all on the internet can figure out what GC6.
You can argue over it,
please. But so apparently, this did come from someone who works at Nintendo, and which makes it seem more credible.
Right. Well, and that's part of the reason why we brought it to Chris. Because Chris has handled numerous amounts of boards and prototypes. I've had a fair share myself, but he's really the expert when it comes to the prototypes. And what we found on the back was interesting. Chris?
Yeah, so right here, you're not going to be able to see it on camera, I'm sure, but we did take close-up pictures. we've got instructions on how to configure the various jumpers on the front of the board to put it in different configurations to run different games. And they're actually etched into the PCB design instead of using the silk screen. The other interesting thing I thought was that they're socketed EEPROMs. So that's another thing. When you first posted it, I was like, somebody could have just written the ROM on there.
Of course.
So what we did to authenticate it was we've dumped this and we compared it against known prototype ROMs that came off of one of the first 4 original, and it matches exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, it doesn't match up with any of the Earthbounds that you can download that have had hacks to work on older emulators. So this is 100% legitimate. That's absolutely an amazing find.
So the last thing we need to do for everyone is, of course, fire it up. Let's see what it looks like. All right, Chris, let's fire this up.
Fire it up.
So, of course, we had to use the top loader versus just the standard toaster because those chips actually stick out a little bit, so it won't fit. And this is what we got. Earthbound.
And you see it's got the correct title screen. A lot of the hacks will say Earthbound 0 to differentiate it from the Super Nintendo Earthbound. And some of the other prototypes will say Mother, or hacked prototypes I should say. But all the original ones should say Earthbound just like that. And we have this, we've already saved a game on it.
So the battery's still good?
Yeah, the battery's still good, amazingly enough. Would have been a pretty shitty deal, honestly, if we had to change the battery.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely should have asked for your money back, if that were the case. The NES version of this is different than the Japanese in that you can actually run. So it makes the game go a lot faster than playing the original Famicom version. Yeah, lamp doesn't move anymore. You win.
You win. That's so cool. Yeah, really one of a kind here. Or I should say one of 5.
1 of 5, yeah.
1 of 5, but for us it's one of a kind. Alright. Cool, so that's it. You guys saw Earthbound prototype on a top loader at Chris's house, which is also home for Lost Classics.
We do all sorts of reproductions. We do prototypes like Earthbound.
Right.
Super Nintendo, we do Atari games. I do a lot of repairs for this gentleman here, and every now and then we dump prototypes.
Yeah, so once again, we appreciate you watching the video. Like and subscribe. Share it if you can. You can check out my Facebook page at The Place for Gamers, or my website at theplaceforgamers.com and lostclassics.com.
LostClassicVGS.com.
LostClassicsVGS.com. And Jacob, you can see him at...
I'm a comedian.
He's a comedian, so yeah.
JacobChristopherComedy.com.
There you go. Earthbound. Thanks for watching, guys.